I want to tell you something that took me way too long to figure out. For years, I was comparing myself to other people in my industry. I was watching what they were doing. I was looking at their results, looking at their audience size, and even looking at their income when they're talking about how much money they're making every month. And every time I did that, I would walk away feeling like I was not working hard enough. And I also felt that I was not disciplined enough. I was not focused enough. Like something was wrong with me because I was not where they are. And then one day I stopped and actually looked at what I was comparing myself to. And I realized I was comparing my starting conditions to their current results. I was comparing myself to people with resources that I did not have and calling the gap between us a discipline problem. It was not a discipline problem. It was never a discipline problem. Now, let me name this trap clearly because I think a lot of people are in and do not realize it. Comparison is not measuring what you think that it is measuring. You think it is measuring effort, discipline, commitment. It's not. It is measuring outcomes for completely different starting conditions. And then it's using the difference in outcomes as a story about your character. That is not an accurate measurement. That is a setup. And here's what I mean by that. When you compare yourself to someone who has, for instance, a team behind them, and don't get me wrong, they work very hard for it. And some of them had generational wealth to fall back on, and a network they were born into, a country that was built for people who look like them, a family even that supported their vision from day one. And you have been figuring this out all along. And as an immigrant in a country that was not built for you, with a family that took years to come around in supporting you, with no safety net, with no roadmap, you are not comparing discipline to discipline. You are comparing two completely different starting conditions. And the fact that their outcome looks different tells you nothing, absolutely nothing about your discipline. Now, let me get specific about what I was actually doing when I was comparing myself, because I think specificity is what makes this real. I was looking at coaches and consultants who had built audiences of tens of thousands of people, and I was asking myself, why am I not there yet? What I was not asking was, did they start with a built-in audience from a previous career or platform? Did they have a partner whose income covered their expenses while they built? Did they have a team handling the things that I was doing alone myself at midnight? Did they grow up in a culture where entrepreneurship was normalized, where they had an example to follow, where the path was visible because someone in their family had already walked it? I was not asking any of that. I was just looking at the outcome and assuming that the starting conditions were the same. They were not. They almost never are. I came from Haiti. I made a decision to build my life in America against my family's wishes. I figured out 2 years of this largely alone. I chose tech before most homes had internet without anyone in my world who could tell me what that path looked like. I started this YouTube channel at 50 years old, building an audience from scratch with no existing platform to leverage. And I was comparing myself to people who had none of those starting conditions. That is not a fair comparison. It was never a fair comparison. And here's what comparing yourself to people with resources that you do not have actually costs you. It makes you question the wrong thing. Instead of asking, what do I actually need to move forward? You ask, what is wrong with me that I am not further along? And that question, it leads you nowhere useful because the answer is not what is wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you. The answer is you have been measuring yourself against the wrong standard. It also makes you work harder in the wrong direction. Because if you believe the gap is discipline, you try to close the gap with more hustle, more content, more hours, more pushing, when what you actually needed was not more hustle. What you actually needed was a clearer strategy, a mapped customer journey, and perhaps a validated offer, something that you create that you know that people really want, or a system that works for you. Hustle on top of a broken plan is just expensive motion. And the deepest cost, it's what it does to your confidence. Because every time you compare yourself to someone with resources you do not have and walk away feeling like you are not enough, you deposit a belief into yourself that is not true. And those deposits, they accumulate over time because you start to believe that the gap is about you when it was never about you. It was always about the starting conditions. So here's how I want you to think about this differently moving forward. Comparison is not inherently bad. The problem is not that you are comparing. The problem is what you are comparing and what conclusions you are drawing from it. So stop comparing your outcome to their outcome. Start comparing your starting conditions to their starting conditions. Because when you do that, the picture looks completely different. Because what you have built from where you started with what you had, it is not a discipline problem. It is actually remarkable. And here is something else that I want you to consider. The people you are comparing yourself to, the ones with the big audiences and the big income numbers, if they had started where you started with your starting conditions, would they be where they are today? Honestly, we don't know. And I am not asking that to be mean. I am asking it because I think the answer, it changes how you see yourself. So here's what I measure now instead of comparing myself to other people. I measure myself against myself. Where was I 6 months ago? Where was I a year ago? What did I not know how to do then that I know how to do now? What was I afraid then that I have done anyway since? What did not exist 6 months ago that I had built? That is my real progress. And it has nothing to do with where someone else is. When I look at it that way, 6 months ago, I did not have the clarity that I have now about who I serve and how. 6 months ago, I was not recording with this level of consistency. 6 months ago, I did not have the myth busting formula I am now using across every video. 6 months ago, I did not have the channel description, the banner, the encore post, the content strategy that I have now. That is progress, and that is real progress. And that has nothing to do with where someone else is. I am a Haitian immigrant who made a decision to build her life in America against everyone's wishes. I started with none of the resources that the people I was comparing myself to had. No safety net, no roadmap, no family who had done this before me here, no country that was built for people who look like me, who are from where I am from. And I kept going anyway. Not because I was more disciplined than the people I was comparing myself to, but because I stopped comparing my chapter 1 to their chapter 10 and started measuring what actually mattered, how far I had come from where I started. So stop measuring yourself against people with resources that you do not have, and start instead measuring yourself against the version of you from 6 months ago. That is your real competition. And I'm willing to bet she's already winning. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Webley, and I want you to drop a comment below and tell me, who have you been comparing yourself to that you need to stop? I want to read every single one of your answers, and I want you to hit subscribe because I will see you in the next video.